situation. And those are the kind of decisions we are called to make, even though it's on this micro level here. For him, it's about a sports decision and does he commit a summer. But when you're an adult, you have to gauge, is something worth my investment? How much am I going to invest before I get a return? Will I get a return? And so you just walked him through these incredibly huge problem solving, or you allowed him to walk himself through this big adult moment. He doesn't even realize it, that will prepare him for many choices he'll have to make very soon, as you point out. And one of the things that Dr. Shefali talks about is deciding when it's too soon to put your child in an activity. So how did you gauge when it was time to get him out there into the world and into this intramural sports situation? What, for you, how did you know it was right?
I didn't. That's one of those it takes a village moments. My dad pointed out to me, I was really young when I had Ethan. I hadn't really no idea what I was doing. And he pointed out, he said, have you ever watched him with a ball? I was like, yeah. I mean, we go outside and, play with the ball all the time. He's like, no. His eye-hand coordination is really exceptional, and I think that you should see if he has an interest in a sport. And I thought, at 3? That sure seems young at that time. I thought, they don't even have things for 3-year-olds, do they? Well, sure enough, they did. And I asked him, I said, do you want to play soccer? And he was all about it. He loved it, and he just thrived because, at 3, most of the kids are literally picking the grass and looking around and dancing and being 3-year-olds. No, he would make goal after goal after goal, and he was just a little superstar, and he loved it. He was really good at it. But without my dad saying, hey, have you noticed? I would have had no idea. I would not have even, it wouldn't even cross my mind. And he's very social as well, and so they just being around the other kids and in that environment, he just thrived in it. But it's not for every kid. Not every kid should go out and play soccer at 3, It's every kid is their own little person. But you also do have to realize that's a part of being a parent, and just, being the facilitator to help them grow is to kind of notice what they're good at, even when they're little, because they are all born with their own little talents and gifts, and it's our job as parents to nurture those and bring them to their highest good. That's really what our job is about.
That is exactly what it's about, and I think that's wonderful, again, to point back to the fact that it does take a village to raise a child, because that hand-eye coordination of Ethan's is now infamous in the best way. He is known for being so adept at sports. But when he was a kid, he was just a little rock star. I always tell you he looked like Mowgli to me. He was so cute, and with his little dark hair and his amazing tan, and he was just running and so pint-sized. It's just adorable. I can't believe he's almost going to college. It's just, I don't know how did we get old, Kate? How does this happen?
I don't know. I still cry all the time the minute I think about him leaving. He may drive me nuts sometimes, but yeah. It does happen so fast. So fast.
It does, and you always tell me it's the best thing that Ethan saved your life, and he made your life better, and he helped you get your head on straight. And a lot of chatter has been, happening about whether or not you have kids, how late is it to have kids, when you choose kids, do you choose your career or your kids? And you had mentioned a quote from Oprah. Can you tell us about that in regards to kids?
Yeah, she was asking all of her guests, what is the hardest decision you had to make to fulfill your destiny? And for her, it was either her career or having children, because for her, it was, she could only do one or the other, and she knew that one of them would suffer if she chose both. So she chose her career. And for some people, that is a choice you have to make. Some people are dead set on having children, and that's what they want to do, and that's wonderful. Some people are dead set on having careers and not children, and that's wonderful. And I think society puts on us that, you should get married, have children, whatever, this is what you should do. But not everybody is built that way. God blessed me with my child when he did, I think for a reason. I was on a bad path. But once I found out I was pregnant, it woke me up, and it gave me purpose, and it gave my life meaning again, because at that particular time I didn't have purpose or meaning, I thought. So it's a greater decision than just what do we feel like, and sometimes it's made for us and sometimes it's not. Every person is different.
And that's something that I want for listeners today to be comfortable with, wherever you are, whatever station you are in your life, whether you have kids already, you're thinking about having kids, you're a woman in your 30s nearing the time that everybody tells you is the danger zone about whether or not you should have kids. If that's something that you are thinking about, it's so important to understand that if it's really meant for you, it will absolutely happen. It's something in fear. My mother is a riddler. She talks to me in riddles, and that is something that she always has said to me is, Monette, if it is to be for you, it will be for you. And so I would push back sometimes and say, when she would say, well, Monette, how come you haven't X, Y, and Z? Because my mom could be kind of helicopter. And I would say, Mother, if it is to be for me, it will be for me, as you always say. So I think that's really interesting that Oprah made that very concerted and maybe conscientious decision not to have children in her life, because she talks about having had a pregnancy when she was younger and her thinking it was going to ruin her life and everything. Very, very real feeling she had I think she was very young when she got pregnant, 14 or 15. And she had this no, I can't have children. It's not meant for me. And at that time, maybe she was thinking of it in that, as we talked about last week, that part of your brain that's not fully formed, the prefrontal cortex that's not fully formed, and she didn't understand what her life would really be. But some part of her made a decision and then continued to make that decision for the duration of her career. And she picked something else, and she's done greater good in the world. But that doesn't mean she wouldn't have been a fantastic mother had she chosen to do that. But I do think that it's wonderful that we as women get to make that decision, whether we want to have the children, whether we want the family. I've often heard women on some of her shows crying and discussing, wow, I feel like not a great mom because I'm a very driven career woman, or I feel like not a great mom because my energy is really focused on all these charities or whatever else I'm doing. And I always have wondered about that. Do you have to pick? Is there any way that we find balance in our life, or is it an either or? Do you think that having had a thriving career would have changed the way you parented Ethan, or are you happy that now your career is thriving, Ethan's almost grown up? What would you have preferred?
That's a great question. I can't imagine not having my son in my life, so I would definitely have preferred to have him. But like we always say, God gives us grace for our place, and if you have a career and you have a child, then the universe, God, whatever you get your spirituality from, will give you the grace and the answers to do both. I think there is some people that can do both wonderfully. For me, as we've discovered and you've helped me discover, it's not a time for me to have a relationship right now because I can't do both well. I discovered I'm either 100% in my relationship or 100% with my child. I don't do both well. I tried it. It doesn't work for me. But that doesn't mean I'm a bad person and that I won't eventually have a relationship. And Oprah, now that, she has her girls that she calls her girls in the school that she has,
Mm-hmm.
So she got to experience motherhood, maybe not the conventional way that society sees it, but she calls them her daughters, and she sees herself as a mother figure. So she got a taste of it when it was right for her, and it's okay if you have children later in life too. I think that's also something that's changing slowly, that women in their 40s are having children now instead of, in your 20s when that was maybe the time it was supposed to be, and now maybe it's in your 40s. So there's no set rules. There's really not. And God will always give you grace for your place, and it'll work. It'll work. And like you said, if it's meant to be, it will be. And the path will come. The answers will come.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said. This is just an off-the-cuff thing here, but I have been of the philosophy my entire life that when you get into a relationship, that it's ideal if you can spend some time with your spouse and get to know them, get to really know them before the kids come. And I know you and I had a conversation where your mother was concurring with that idea, saying that it's important to get to spend time. And she said that she and your dad had a chance to get to know each other before the kids became part of life. And they, go ahead.
Oh, I wasn't saying anything.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and they had a chance to really get to know each other. So whenever kids come for you, whoever may be listening today, don't, judge yourself on it. Everybody has a different personal preference. For me, in my situation, that's what I would have preferred, is to get to know my spouse for a while before kids were ever a factor. Kids may not ever be a factor for me, but it doesn't stop me from being endlessly curious about parenting and about interacting, because kids have been such a big part of my life. So I'm always trying to figure out new ways that we can cope and evolve and become better parents and better people. And I think that kids make us better people. Don't you think so, Kate?
Absolutely. There's so many lessons I have learned from being a parent that I don't think I could have learned otherwise. But I also would like to say that I'll only be 38 when Ethan graduates college, and I had to go through a period where a mom is not all that I am. Sometimes we forget when we're moms, I think especially, that we're still women too, and we still have lives besides our children, even though they're a huge part. I'm actually looking forward to seeing what life has to offer me after my son is raised, although you never stop being a mom. My mom's told me that many times. You're never not a mother. They always come back. They always need you, no matter what their age. But the role shifts, and they may need just less of you, and you can move on and have a whole second chapter. I'm going to have a whole second chapter of my life. I'll always be a mother, and he'll always be my number one priority, but we forget that we are women, and we have other things that we want to accomplish besides motherhood, even though that might be our most wonderful job. But I just wanted to point that out, because I forgot that for a long time, that I'm a woman and that I also have a life besides just being a mom. And then that's okay. We don't have to feel guilty about it.
Well, that's an interesting thing, not feeling guilty about being a person and a woman that has their own life. You brought up a couple of good points there. What I want to know is, what happens when your son tries to parent you? Because I have seen you have moments where you have lived your life and lived your best life, and whether it was just going to a baby shower, and there are moments when he may want to question you about curfew and time. How do you handle that as a single mother?
Yeah, I think that's something that is, because I am a single mother and he's a very dominant male person.
Yes.
He's very grounded in who he is. And we had to have that conversation. I had to remind him that I am a person, that you are safe and you are protected, and I will always be here. But it's okay for me to have a life outside of you. That was kind of a hard conversation, and he was very angry and perplexed for a minute, but then he remembered, oh yeah, you're right, I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm okay, and if you're gone for a couple hours, that's okay too. I'm going to make it. So it's always a learning experience, and it's always soul search. Parenting is so soul searching and spiritual, because I don't always have the answer, and I don't know what the right thing is, and I just have to pray. And I'm far from perfect. I have tantrums.
No, never. You've never had a tantrum in your life, girl.
He loves to tell Monette about his mom's tantrums, and he thinks it's just hilarious. So I want to think I am just a wonderful. Never. I lose my cool. I am not perfect. And Ethan can laugh about it. We can laugh about it. But at the moment, he is a little terrified when I do have my outburst.
They're terrifying. They are. And they're very well structured. It's very theatrical. But more than that is that what he doesn't realize is that when he's coming in the room, because he has this way, for the listeners that do not understand this, he'll come in the room and he knows that it's usually Kate's on the phone with me. If she's on the phone, we're probably talking to each other. So he'll come in and it's this high-pitched, almost dog whistle scream, and then he says, Monette! And then he tells me about whatever's happening in the day, not directly ever on the phone to me, in the background screaming at full teenage volume, okay? So
Right.
it's become the light of my days when we do get